Difficult. Women. Hi.
Oh, hey.
Hi. Didn't see you there.
Oh my God, just fancy meeting you here.
Oh my goodness. What a coincidence.
Oh, who are you?
I'm Marie.
Oh, I'm Katy.
What?
And are we doing a podcast right now?
No.
I think we might be.
No.
I think we might be, and I think it might be called
Difficult Women.
You know what else I think?
What?
I think we're in a band.
We are in a band.
Oh my God, I was right.
We are in a band called Reformed Whores.
What a cool name.
We're a folk pop comedy duo.
We're working on that.
We're working on that brain. My friends are like, "You do pop songs now?" I'm like, "Shut up! I don't
really.
Shut up.
I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know.
Hard.
We're working on it.
We're like still kind of country, but
If
we're
Taylor
kinda
Swift can
not.
move to pop, we can too.
Because if anybody has an idea of how we should describe our music, send us an email.
Because we used to be
women.
Yeah.
What is it?
Difficult Women Podcast at gmail.com. Yeah. Because we used to say, country comedy duo, which would hit the nail on the head,
right?
A little bit,
and then sort of shifting, rebranding.
Yeah, our vasectomy song's like a '70s porn song. It
totally.
Sounds like
but we're not exactly a '70s porn comedy band.
No,
so that's hard.
You can't write that in a bio.
That's a lot.
So folk pop, we're trying that, but really, maybe somebody else would have a better idea.
I think you will, and they're going to email it to us.
Great,
help us,
do it,
please.
Help us, help.
Speaking of help, you can help us out by coming to see our live show in New York City. We're doing an hour. That's right. September 19th. It's a Thursday night. So what better thing to do than come to our show at Caveat, New York. It's in the Lower East Side. It's an awesome space. Super cool venue.
They pride themselves on smart comedy. Did you know we're smart comedy?
We're smart comics.
Smart comics.
Yep.
We're going to get some cool outfits.
Yeah.
Working on that.
Also, if you have any ideas for what we should wear.
Jesus, help us out.
We're not good at this.
Homegirl can't go to Target again.
You should see what we're wearing right now. I'm just like, don't know how to dress myself. I'm just like in like a Snoopy pajamas. And I was in like a dog costume. Someone help us.
Please help us.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Maybe we do need that.
Just the dog costume?
Dog costumes, and I'll dress up as like a
We did.
Elephant.
The most confused we ever made our audience once was when we first started out. And I thought this was so funny, but the audience did not like it. But it was Halloween. And so, wait, what did we do?
Well, we normally would wear these country, very, very country outfits. And then we were like, we're going to dress up for Halloween. So like in character, we dressed up. Mm-hmm. And Marie had a horse costume from a video, so she dressed like a horse, and I was like, and I'll be a buggy, and I dressed up like a bug. So we were a horse and buggy, but we were like, it did not make any sense.
And then when we sang our songs about equality, they were like,
people were like, what is happening?
Yeah, why is a horse and bug singing about dicks? It was so funny.
Dicks and equality.
It was so fun.
I had a good time.
God, we've had some good times together. Mm-hmm. Favorite.
We had some good times together where other people were very confused.
Very confused. Most confused also was when we played that coffee shop.
Oh God.
In Western Massachusetts.
Yeah.
4:00.
It was like midterms.
So
all these
people
kids
are studying.
Were trying to study.
Yeah.
And then we were like, we're going to play songs about dicks.
Yep. You've never seen a coffee shop clear out so quickly.
Fast, yeah. Then we had it all to ourselves.
Yeah, and we made $12 that day. I remember being like, well, at least we made something. Talk about reframing.
Yeah.
Positivity.
I was mortified. We had shown up and done that. That was awful.
That was bad.
We also blew someone's ear out during sound check.
Yeah.
It was little feedback central.
We've learned. We're getting better.
That was years ago. That was our first tour.
That was. We took a bus there and got dropped off at the mall.
Right. And we played for Santa later. Not at the mall, but we played for Santa at the... Remember Santa was at our show?
Yeah. And
that was one of our best shows up until that time, though. I remember that being really fun.
Pretty sure that Santa grabbed my butt.
Oh, he definitely grabbed mine.
He was groping.
Speaking of which,
that
leads us into our topic today. Someone call out Santa.
Somebody hashtag me too.
Oh my God. Well, we just thought it might be worth talking about this. I mean, clearly we are always aware of these issues, and we talk about them. We try to address them in our songs and things like that. But specifically, this hashtag Me Too movement. It seems like everybody has different varying levels of understanding about it, and also opinions about it, and
we haven't talked about it yet, so we thought, hey, might as well dive in,
give our sort of perspective on
the
experience.
Yes.
So can you declare #MeToo?
Yes, I'm a #MeTooer. I've been Me Too'd.
I've been Me Too'd. Me too.
Me Too'd.
There's lots of stories about
so many stories.
Varying degrees of.
But because of this movement, and I do want to clarify, it's not a moment. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. No, this is changing society. Now that we're having these intense conversations about things that have been happening to women for honestly like thousands of years.
Sure.
Some people are like, oh, well, just, decades. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure this has been happening forever.
Yeah.
When the caveman like hit the woman over the head with, I'm pretty sure that was Me Too.
Yeah. That was. Yeah.
But people saying like, oh, he was taken down by Me Too. It's making like the man sound like a victim, which I hate when people say that too.
Right. That it's
like, no, you actually did that to yourself.
Right.
My friend, when you took out your penis.
Right. Well, so like that's the first part. So if you don't know like what we're talking about,
where are you living? Come on, get with it.
But there's been this sort of like movement that started in 2017, but it was the concept of Me Too started by Tarana Burke in like 2006, and it was for a way to like make it more comfortable for Black women to speak out about their experiences. Specifically, that's where it started, and then. Luckily, at first, Tarana was like not given any credit for this.
Right.
And then later, thankfully, people were like, "Hey, wait a minute. Let's like make sure that we know that she's been talking about this for over 10 years."
Right.
And it's just now kind of getting a little bit of some momentum.
And did technically the Me Too #MeToo it start because of Harvey Weinstein?
I don't know.
I was trying to like find, because it seemed like that's where things like really started to.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know the thing I was just reading attributed Alyssa Milano to a lot of this, where she was like, let's start spreading our stories. And like,
right.
I think that the hashtag portion of the Me Too thing sort of comes from maybe not, I don't know if Alyssa Milano started the hashtag Me Too thing, but I think she was sort of spreading the word. Using that hashtag, and then that's when it went viral because there was actually like a hashtag to use.
Harvey Weinstein. So I worked with him before, and I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I have seen him in person, and I've seen he's not a nice person. I watched him do things that you're like, what? It's because of his power and money that he was able to get away with so much for so long.
Right.
And I think it's unbelievable that a man with such power was able to be taken down finally.
Right.
And it's only because women were brave enough to speak out.
Right. And I think that it's worth mentioning too that like women will speak out and there's still like so much pushback that like, well, they're lying or like there's, and then look, I get it. Some people lie. It's not like it never happens. I definitely can't say that there definitely have been women that have lied about being raped and lied about being like abused and things like that. That exists. But to use that as the reason to like not believe women, like there's so many more women that have actually experienced something that don't get listened to.
Right.
And that is so much more common than somebody like lying about it. And I think that we need to start making sure that But that being said, I'm not necessarily into this believe all women thing.
Yeah.
Because some women do lie and some women do ruin people's lives like that don't need to be ruined. I mean, Emmett Till would be a good example of that. You know what I mean? Where like this woman, and it's, they exaggerated these stories where, and that's where this stuff like gets complicated too. Because it is like, there are like race issues with some of these things where like the white feminism versus intersectional feminism, that like, people do lie and exaggerate about things. So like that people will carry those stories with them. And then they try to use those as like the main example of why women are all liars and that none of this stuff is true. And like, that's just not the case.
The Me Too movement has really brought up like these gray areas too.
Totally.
You don't really think about the gray area, or I hadn't before, of like putting a man I've been having a lot of conversations with other guy friends of mine about Me Too. And like everyone makes jokes nowadays, I think. In 2017, it was really scary for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Like the conversations I was having with some of my good friends of like, well, made them reflect upon their own lives of like, what have they done? And it actually made me reflect on one moment in my life that we did a burlesque show, and the burlesque dancer was dancing, and I slapped her bare ass.
Oh.
And I remember in the moment she turned around and she was like, don't do that. And we were hosting the show.
Oh.
Remember? It was it was like a Texas burlesque show.
Oh, I didn't know.
And the woman, so we were hosting and we like were to the side and the burlesque dancer was dancing and I slapped her ass. And she whipped around. She was like, don't do that. If you do it, everybody else will do it.
Oh, right.
And I felt so terrible.
Right.
I was ashamed of myself. And then it wasn't until years later when the Me Too movement, I was like, I Me Too'd somebody.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a good person,
No,
but
of
yet
course, but
I was
yeah.
like caught in the, I can't explain why I did it.
Right.
But in some weird way, it was like, did I feel like I had ownership over this woman all of a sudden so I could place my hands over her? That's ridiculous. That's disgusting. I'm the problem. No, I was kidding.
No,
but you know what? But those are the so I would tell like, you know, my guy friends about that of like, oh my God, yeah, actually I remember touching, you know,
doing something
and all like, you know, the conversation of like, no. And then like, yes means no or no means yeah. It's like, no, okay, we need to have all this gray area stuff. We need to really figure out because.
And I will say that I think that like something like the Harvey Weinstein thing was so clear cut.
Right.
And even like, I know there's still a lot of like pushback around like the, Bill Cosby thing. And there's a lot of race stuff worked in with that too. So like that gets complicated, but like those were such clear examples of a man being a monster, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That like it was so horrifying, like what these guys had done, and that it was like swept under the rug for so long, and that they got away with it for so long that now kind of putting a light on it, that seems like an easy one for people to kind of understand. Like that's so clearly unacceptable, right? So then it's like we're dealing with this weird, like you're saying, this gray area now, where like someone like Louis C.K., for example, where he didn't do anything illegal. Per se.
A lot of people like to say he didn't do anything wrong. He asked.
Right. There's lots of ways to
explain
look
actually
at this.
what he's being, you know, accused of.
Right.
And he admitted to.
Right.
That he was jerking off backstage.
And like whipping his dick out and stuff in front of people.
And jerking off in front of other female comics. I guess there were certain instances where two girls went back to his hotel room and he asked if he could do it.
And I think they didn't understand that he was serious.
Right.
So they were sort of like, oh yeah, whatever, like, haha. And then he like did it. And then they were like, oh shit, this is like happening.
Right.
And then they like ran out of the room.
Right.
I guess eventually. I'm not 100% sure if that's what happened, but they were frozen for a minute and then they somehow got out of the room.
Right.
But then they started telling everybody because they were like, holy fuck, Louis C.K. just whipped his dick out in front of us. So they're going around telling everybody, which is good. Like you should tell people when shit happens that you're uncomfortable with or whatever.
Right.
And I think they were so like not sure what to do about it. And then his like agencies and the
manager,
the festival and stuff just started shutting them down and being like, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about this. And to me, that's the problem, the biggest problem. It's like we can argue whether or not he like whipped a dick out or what. I know there's actually no argument that he definitely whipped his dick out. That's not even up for discussion. But like what's sort of weird to me about that is that people want to say like, well, it's not that bad, but I'm like, okay, then fine, if it's not that bad, then why was he so spooked about everyone saying the truth about what happened?
Right.
And that's the
and
part
why did he keep quiet for so long about it? Because other people knew, and he would get people to silence themselves because, you know, or he'd get his
or a
people.
woman would start talking about it, and then there was that girl, Jen Kirkman, who like started talking. She didn't even mention
on
his
her
name.
radio show, right?
She didn't even mention his
name. Was it a podcast or radio show? Or something
like that.
Yeah.
But she didn't mention his name, but then she was getting like cease and desist type letters from like agents, and like her agent was saying, you're going to get blackballed if you don't stop talking about this. But it's like, that's not okay. Like to me, that's like the bigger problem. Like,
that like you're using your power to get away with sexual
and to silence somebody. It's like you're silencing their experience. So like, if you're going to be bold enough to whip your dick out, then you need to deal with the repercussions of whatever that means. And if you're hiding behind your money and you're hiding behind your like, you know, people, and then you're like ruining other people's, like other women's like careers in the meantime because they're trying to like, as humans, like say like, hey, I didn't feel comfortable with this and just be expressing themselves, then that's a problem.
And there's other, I mean, there's other comedians that we hear rumors about who experienced him whipping out his dick, who never said anything, and their careers are thriving. Well, so I don't know if
it's
what kind
scary to put yourself in a position where
to risk your dreams to come forward and say
this
something.
Is beyond the comedy and entertainment industry. Like Me Too has been very focused on a lot of these famous people and stuff, but this happens in workplaces all the time, where your boss hits on you or makes a move or makes you uncomfortable, and it puts you in a. I think that the conversation that I've been having with a lot of men recently is that they don't understand what that feels like. They've never been in that position where or it's very rare. Every so often I think it does happen to men, but it happens to women so frequently that you're in a position where your boss or your teacher comes and does something to you or puts you in a position where now you don't want to get fired. You don't want to lose your raise. You don't want to get a bad. I had a situation with a professor that I won't go into details with, but he put me in a situation where it was very inappropriate. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fail this class. And I had been such a good student. I was a freshman in college. I couldn't bear to fail. And so then I'm dancing around this situation. And I'm too afraid to tell anybody because I don't want to
hurt your college career.
I don't want to hurt my I don't want to hurt my situation.
And get back to your parents.
And I didn't believe anyone would really believe me. And it was just so strange. I didn't really tell anybody for years about it. And it was so inappropriate. And it was him 100% using his power, his his stature, over me. And when you're 17, 18, you really haven't lived much life. So you don't know what to do. So these people that also say well, those girls, they should have just walked out of the room or said, hey, I don't like that. That's not how this works.
Right. Well, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
I watched a video of a 15-year-old who was raped by him in his apartment. And she kind of explained, first off, how much guilt she felt after it happened, how she was ashamed and she didn't want to tell anybody. But how many adults, she's 15 years old, and she was put in this circumstance. Yeah. How many adults it took to get her in that room.
Oh, God, so many people were complicit in this.
Yes, it's just so disgusting. But yet, because of his power,
right? No one wants to say no to him for some strange reason. And and when I say nobody wants to say no, I mean the adults, not even the kids,
right?
Yeah, because you don't want to get fired or you don't want whatever. But it's what is happening to our. I don't want to sound crazy, our morals, but isn't it a given that we shouldn't be setting children up to get?
It should be really
fucked by some disgusting old man. That's seems so obvious.
Right.
Money is weird though.
Money
makes, but so even aside from money stuff, right? So those, again, these are these really big, almost conspiracy level, situations that are, I mean, they're true. They're happening. They happen. But the everyday Me Too stuff, I think that's the stuff that becomes really difficult for people because again, Jeffrey Epstein is so clearly a monster. But then what about when you're on a date and someone's coercing you to have sex, you know what I mean? And then you don't really want to, but then you
don't want to feel bad. Yeah.
Right. Because it's almost easier to have sex with them than to leave.
It almost
or
kind
something.
of ties into our apology episode
totally
of how society has trained women to to be subservient to men almost.
100%. Yeah. That they never get the blame on these things in a weird way. It's the woman is the one that has to kind of
Well, so I watched this morning before you came over. Do you remember years ago we did this fundraising event for a film called Believe Her?
Yeah.
So we did this event to help raise money to fund a short film called Believe Her. And it's written, directed by this woman named Erin Doyle Cooper. And actually it's been out. It came out last year, I guess. Right. And so I watched it this morning and I'm going to post it on our Facebook so you can see. It's a short film that explores what happens when a woman tries to report sexual assault. So, also a cool thing is that Erin directed it and then everybody on set, from the PAs to the composer, all identified as female. So this movie, I watched it this morning. I'm just sobbing. You should watch it, but I'm going to spoil it right now. Basically, this woman is on a first date from an online situation, and they say good. The guy walks her home, and they kiss goodbye. And then he's like, can I actually come upstairs and use the bathroom? Which is so scary because, like several years ago, I had an online date and I met him kind of close by, and then he ended up walking me home, and he said the same exact line. I was like, good night. And he was like, oh, actually, do you mind? I really got to pee. I was like, nope.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Because it's nice that you even, I mean, honestly, I might not even think anything of it. No. I might be like, sure, come up, and just not think about that necessarily.
I don't know.
It's good that you did. So anyway,
the story, so he comes up. He then is like, does this whole rigmarole about how he's too drunk to go home. Does she mind if he stays on the couch? So he does. And then he sneaks in her bedroom and rapes her.
Right.
And then when she calls the police, and this is the thing that I think I think that this was like a culmination of other stories into one, but it's like the police come, she calls the police. Well, she first calls her friend, and, she's like, don't call me, call the police. The police come. And then they ask all these questions like, well, is that what you were wearing? Right. Do you get drunk a lot and bring men home? Do you, and it's like, so what if I was wearing this? So what if I am promiscuous? Why is it
me to like,
right. Yeah. Rape is rape.
And also like control yourself, guys. Like you don't have, nobody owes you anything.
No.
You don't need to like, you don't need to rape anybody. It's just not a necessary thing.
Get a fleshlight.
Stoya
has a lovely line of fleshlights.
You can even hire a prostitute. It's not legal, but like that is an option. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so if that's really the thing you need to do, do it. Yeah. Do it. Again, I guess we shouldn't be promoting something that's illegal, but there's other ways to like have and be nice to your prostitutes. Do not be mean to your prostitutes. But like, yes, I think that like that is like such a. I don't think and imagine like, and I think even with this Louis C.K. thing, the thing that's like so infuriating is it's like not being like heard.
Right.
And I think that as a human, you need to be heard.
Right. The Louis C.K. thing really upsets me. I think just because it is in the comedy community, and there actually was a rumor going around that we were part of
the
it.
Girls,
the girls involved, and we were like, no, never met him. But so he's been popping up, obviously, like all over the country, but especially in New York City, he popped up for the first time at Comedy Cellar a year ago, I think, and then most recently got a standing ovation at Skankfest.
Oh, right. Happened.
And to me, it's just like, is this man allowed to perform?
So I have a very specific, and we may not agree on this, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily agree with me on this, but like, for example, there was like a 45-minute set that got like released that he had done like in New Jersey or something, and so I was like, I'm curious about what and people were upset because he was making jokes about Parkland and stuff, and I was like, I'm just really curious like what this set was. Like I'm gonna like listen, and before making a judgment, I'm gonna listen to the entire set like openly and just hear what I can hear.
And did you laugh?
I didn't really laugh. There was like a couple jokes. I was like, oh, that's a pretty good joke. There definitely was a sense that like, because when you're writing sets, it wasn't ready to be recorded, of course. That happens too. So don't record your comedians when they're,
working on.
You can take pictures of us, but like for most comedians, don't take recordings of them. But like, so there was a lot of jokes that like, I'm like, that could potentially be a good joke. He needs to work on it. This could potentially be a good joke. He needs to work on it. But then he was also choosing to talk about things that were like, like the Parkland stuff. It's like, it wasn't funny. It wasn't a good joke. It wasn't well set up. I didn't really see a future in that joke particularly. It's one thing to try stuff. I mean, but still I was like, I don't really know what's going on here. Like, why is he choosing this topic knowing that he's already in hot water kind of thing? And then at one point near the end of the set, it was like, everything was like revealed to me where like, he said something offensive, which he was saying a lot of offensive things that night. And somebody in the audience was like, oh, like kind of gave like a groan. And then he was like, what the fuck do I care? Why do I fucking care? My life is in shambles. Everybody hates me anyway. Kind of like might as well burn it all down anyway. And so his mentality was so like, he felt so much like a victim that like he felt like he was being unfairly, I think, like criticized for like all the things he had done. I think in his mind, he's apologized. So what's the big deal? So his like attitude was like doubling down on all this stuff and like going for it really hard, as opposed to like maybe trying to give a real apology or like understanding a little bit more from like the perspective of like everyone that's mad, Right. So all that being said, like, do I think he should be not allowed to perform? no, he didn't. He's not in jail. He didn't do anything illegal. Like, I think that like if someone wants to put him up in a venue, then and the owner feels like they don't mind having him there, then he should be allowed to perform there. But I'm also allowed to then get up and ask for my money back or walk out of the theater and like, and be like, I don't want to see him. I didn't know he was going to be here. Like, or not buy a ticket to him. And like, that's also allowed. And I'm allowed to not want to see that performance. But I think we start to dance a fine line when you start saying like, you can't perform. You can't perform. I think a venue is allowed to say, we don't want you here. But like, I think that there's probably a lot of venues that do want him there. And like, that's okay. You know, like I think you can't silence. I know he's tried to silence a lot of people, but eventually they were heard, you know? And like, I think that you can't censor people. I think that that's dangerous to me. Well, but I know not everybody agrees with me.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that Louis C.K. can go to Columbus, Ohio and sell out 6 nights at the Funny Bone now, and will continue to grow. I bet he'll do Madison Square Garden in 3 years and it will completely sell out. There is an audience for him and people love him. It makes me sad that this sort of thing happens and that it can be so quickly like forgotten. And I don't think that he had suffered. I mean, he claims, I think in that, maybe it's some article or maybe it was in that stand-up that he did that you listened to, that he lost like $35 million.
Yeah, no, I think he did lose a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, he says that he lost millions and millions of dollars because of this. And like, but I don't know. It makes me sad because there just hasn't been public consequences to him other than him saying. I mean,
I guess the public consequences are though that he like went from being America's darling,
right? Now he's
and now
like
he's not,
disgraced.
And to be honest, like the people that are like still really, really, really on board with Louis are like not like they're people that don't get it. You know what I mean? Like I think the people that like because he was like almost seen as like a feminist hero, you know, and like definitely he's lost. He's not in those good graces anymore. So like I think to say that he hasn't suffered at all is untrue. I think that like definitely he's lost.
But I don't think that I don't know if he is sorry, or I don't know if he.
I don't know that he's sorry because I mean, again, I think he thinks of himself as like a victim, which is the fucked up part about this. I think, but then I don't know how you make someone sorry. Like, you can't, and like, I don't know.
One thing that I wish that had happened because Aziz, unfortunately, was kind of lumped in also with all these.
Well, I also think it's crazy to lump Louis in with like
Weinstein or Cosby.
Yeah, I mean, we need to figure that out too. Where we can't just lump everybody in as being like, you know, like it's not all the same.
Right.
Rape is not the same as like asking someone if I can whip my dick out and then misunderstanding and then doing it anyway and then trying to silence them. Like that's not okay.
Right.
But it's not illegal.
Right. But and the Aziz thing tue, this woman wrote this article about how she had this really awkward, weird date with him, and when he just wasn't taking her cues and all this stuff, and I would have just loved to have seen a real conversation. Even if you want to lump them together, like with Aziz and with Louis, like with Anderson Cooper doing it, or Katie Couric,
and like maybe like a female comic in there too, to like just sort of talk about like, really hey, this is what's going on, and like maybe you guys did, and I think that really is kind of what the problem is. Like there is like a level, one of these levels is that like societally, men have been getting away with this shit for so long. I think genuinely some guys don't even realize that it's not okay. Right. So, and like we haven't had that conversation. So like the Aziz Ansari example is perfect. And again, I think Marie kind of explained it, but it was just that like he was kind of on an awkward date and like didn't do a good job of picking up social cues. And she was probably trying to give him the benefit. I mean, I've been in situations like that where like you kind of like, I don't know, things don't go the way you wanted to, but you felt uncomfortable saying something in the moment. And you think, well, maybe it'll get better. And then it doesn't. And then you're like, I got to get out of here. And then it just gets awkward. And I think to his credit, like, I think he texted her like as she was going home and said like, I had a great time. I hope to see you again. And then to her credit, I think she said, actually, like you made me really uncomfortable and I didn't really like enjoy tonight at all. Right. And then he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So like they had a little conversation about it. And then it was a little weird that it got like, he got so blasted.
Well, to publish an article in the paper without having a conversation with him. Right. That feels kind of icky to me.
But the thing that was great about it was that it's now a flash, like a spotlight is on that kind of like encounter and behavior that also needs to be addressed. And I think that's where especially like when I'm talking to guys, they get so like defensive and confused because I think a lot of guys have been in those situations. And I think that like women haven't felt comfortable speaking up, partly because sometimes you speak up and then you get raped. You know what I mean? Right. And sometimes you speak up and you get punched, or you get speak up or you get called a whore or a bitch or like a tease. You know what I mean? So we got to get rid of that stuff too, where like, I mean, obviously don't rape, but even just like if you get like defensive and you start calling someone like a cock tease or a whore or like a bitch, or you're like get over yourself. Like don't just say like, oh, I'm sorry, I realized I thought it was your boundaries this way, and I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Right. And then like we can all stop and then like take a breather. And if you guys are meant to be together, then it'll work out. And if you're not, then it won't. And like that's just what dating is too.
Yeah. Well, I think it definitely has changed dating. I think, you know, I've had men now ask, may I kiss you? Rather than before. Great. Yes, which is wonderful.
And I know there was like, even among women, there was a lot of like pushback because they're like, oh, I just want you to take me. You shouldn't have to ask. And it's like, actually, I'd rather you ask because like, if there's going to be any confusion, we don't need that confusion. And I definitely have had a lot more people, like a lot more men be more like, yeah, can I kiss you? Or like, how are you feeling? And and I think that's great. Like that needs to, and also you got to do it to protect yourself. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to be in a situation where you thought something was going one way and then it turned out the woman was really uncomfortable. So like, check in if you're not sure.
Well, I tell you where the most in my life that the Me Too movement has changed is the restaurant industry and just kitchen culture.
Yeah. They're definitely having a lot more like, meetings about that stuff.
Well, so I was actually on my other podcast, my food podcast, I was able to get Trish Nelson, who is a friend of ours.
Right.
But she worked at the Spotted Pig and actually helped take down Ken Friedman. And she was on 60 Minutes talking to Anderson Cooper about the Me Too movement in the restaurant industry. And it is just like, that is exactly where the spotlight needs to be. And is a great example of why the Me Too movement has been such a great thing, because the restaurant industry, you have waitress. So in her case, or, you know, in a lot of people's cases, I think as a woman working in a restaurant, you're waiting tables and your position of power is a lot lower because there's all these, you know, the owner or like the executive chef and especially at the Spotted Pig when she was there, they had like, and everyone knew this, that there was another room for like celebrities or for Mario Batali to like have his way with people. And I mean, she has this story that breaks my heart, but like Amy Poehler was there and that's like one of her idols. And she was so excited that Amy Poehler was there. And so she was getting some plates or glasses as she bent over, and Ken Friedman came up to her and said something about like, well, while you're down there.
Oh, right.
And it was right in front of Amy Poehler.
Right.
And I was like, did Amy Poehler say anything? And it's like, no,
right.
I mean, but that's the thing too. It's like, I think the Me Too movement is allowing us to speak up,
and also to help each other out.
To help each other out too.
Don't feel, you know, it's funny with the restaurant thing. I will not say where, of course, but like a place that I've worked. I was talking to some friends about this. They like had a Christmas party every year. And then all the Me Too stuff started happening. And the Mario Batali stuff, he started going down, all these things. So our chefs got freaked out. So they, instead of just saying like, hey, don't rape anybody at this party, they were like, we're just canceling the party. Yeah. And so we were talking about it, and the girls I was talking to, they're like, well, yeah, and like it just sucks because then it like makes the boys, like the one guy makes one mistake and then everybody kind of suffers like for it, and everybody's, you know, punished. Like all the boys are punished because then nobody gets to have like the party. And I was like, but also who's really punished is like, what the message I'm getting is, oh, a woman spoke out about being assaulted. We're punishing you. We're punishing you as a woman for saying anything. And because you said something, everybody's going to lose their party. And it's your fault as a woman. Because it's like, a dude, just kick the dude out of the party.
Right.
But that's not the message I get.
So I work in events, and I think that was a big conversation last year for holiday parties. A lot of people were not doing holiday parties because they didn't want to, it was a liability.
Right.
Getting people drunk and putting them in those situations. They were like, we're just not going to do that this year. And yeah, I never thought about it like that.
No, it hit me like the other day where I was like, the people that are really being punished are the people that speak out. Because like, you're basically saying like, see, you made everything less fun. And that's what I think so many women worry about is like they want to be the fun one in the group. And if the boys are all like joking around and slapping their, especially as young girls, think about like young girls when you're like trying to like get the boys that you like the boys and like he's touching your boob and like in front of everybody and laughing and you like don't want to be the one that's like, hey, stop it, I don't like that. You want to be like, it's fine, so it's funny because you want to be cool and chill. But like it's not cool, it's not chill, it's not okay. Like, and so to like make that person and like, and of course if you're the girl that says like, hey, I don't like that, everybody turns on you and says like, hey, relax. Relax.
Why are you so uptight?
Relax is maybe my least favorite thing to be told to do ever, unless I'm like at a spa or something. But like that was the word that my professor would use whenever I'd be like, hey, like that makes me uncomfortable. He'd be like, hey, oh, God, relax. God, you're so uptight. Like relax. And it's like, I hate the word trigger word, but like for me, that is such a trigger because I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you. Don't like gaslight me right now and like tell me that like I'm being uppity because you're doing something totally inappropriate right now and you don't want to like deal with the repercussions of it. Like that's insane.
Well, we've talked about this of just the feeling when something like that happens. When I was on the train and I know you've had conversations about the same thing, but like a man like coming up and rubbing his dick on you.
Right.
And it happened to me when I had kind of first moved to New York. And I feel like I remembered hearing stories of like men doing that. And then I would be like, I just love it. If that ever happens to me, I'm going to fucking lose my shit. But then when it did happen to me, I couldn't believe it, but I froze.
Totally.
I couldn't move. I could not believe. First I thought, oh, you're wrong.
It's an accident.
This is an accident.
Yeah, this can't be
This
happening.
Cannot be happening.
Right.
I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
What am I doing?
Oh,
Let me move out of the way.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he moved. And then he spread his legs and then was like humping me like a fucking rabbit or something.
Right.
But I was just shocked. And I'm still shocked to this day of how my reaction was of just freezing. And I started kind of shivering and almost crying.
Yeah.
And I did not whip around and say, how dare you? But, I just could not believe that this was happening in a crowded subway.
Totally.
And luckily there was a saint of a woman who saw me, she was across the train, saw me. And I think she just knew instantly what was happening. Right. And she pulled me through the crowd. She kind of yelled, are you okay? And I couldn't even speak.
Right.
And she literally reached over and pulled me through this crowd. And people were like, what's happening? And then that's when I was like, what are you doing? To the person. And like, she got me and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, I still couldn't find my words.
Well, this is an interesting thing because I think that like a lot of men also, again, with the Louis C.K. thing, for example, or like any of these sort of situations that are like that, a lot of men want to say like, well, why didn't you just tell him to stop? Like, I would just tell him to stop. Or like, why didn't you just like walk away? Or why didn't you like whatever? And they use like fight or flight as a thing. It's like, well, you either fight or you flight. You either turn and you yell at him or you like leave. And a friend of mine who I was talking to the other day about this very thing, she was like, what you don't understand is it's not fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze. They've discovered that's what it is. It's fight. Yes. And that is you can Google it, you can look it up, but they determined that it's not just fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And the most common thing when shit goes down, and this could be any kind of trauma, like a bear or whatever, is the most natural brain reaction is freezing. That's the most common one. And like, so when you hear these stories of freezing, we've been so ingrained to think like, I would do this or I'll do that. Like even you saying like, one of these days when that happens, I'm going to do, because that's definitely happened to me too. And then the other thing that happened for me in that situation where I was being like molested on the street or whatever, is that I blame myself.
Right.
I still blamed myself at the end. And I didn't tell anybody because I was like, I did something wrong. And like, what is that? And like, what have we trained into women to believe that like we are doing something wrong when someone is like assaulting us? And like, but you know what it is? It's like when you call the police and they say, well, you were wearing that.
Right. And then this movie, the police come and are just like, it's everything compiled into that of just, and that's why, so, I mean, spoiler alert, this woman doesn't file charges because she calls her brother who's a lawyer, and and her brother is like, well, I mean, come on, who's going to believe you?
Right.
And that is the thing that like, we have to have more people believing and fighting for us.
Totally. And I think that that's sort of my point too with like, yes, I get it. Some people, and guys love to go back to this thing of like, but then some women lie. And it's like, totally. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, we have to make sure we don't turn the other way and then start just like doing this like crazy witch hunt thing where we're like accusing everybody of anything anybody ever says. But that's why you have like due process, and that's why you like take it to trial, and that's why you like whatever. But then the point being that like we have not had any justice for this shit.
Right.
So can we get some justice first, and then we can worry about like who's lying and who's not lying, and we can, you know, we'll let's make sure we get due process so that everyone can tell their stories. Because as it is right now, Brock Turner's raping some girl behind a dumpster, and then he gets a slap on the wrist. So is she lying? She wasn't even conscious.
She wasn't even conscious.
So she's not lying. It's these guys saw him do this.
Right.
And he got like 6 months of like walking around with like a ankle bracelet maybe or something, and then no record on his, I mean, but that's like,
well, I mean,
so who's so worried? Are you worried about people lying? What are they going to lie for?
Right.
What you lie about getting raped, and then let's say the guy gets convicted, but he doesn't get convicted. He just like walks around and he's like, fine.
Right.
So
well,
like
no one's
walking around like lying all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Brett Kavanaugh, or you get to be like a judge.
Right.
You know, so I think that like that's the least of our worries in reality. Like you really don't get that much by accusing people of raping you. Mm-hmm. And I think that like, yes, we are in a little bit of like a witch hunty culture like right now, where people get a little like worked up. And here's an interesting one. How do you feel about the what's his name, Al Franken?
Oh, yeah,
because that's one where like I think personally he got like whipped up into this like frenzy.
And he was he was witch hunted.
He was witch hunted down, and he also being like a liberal. Like I was talking to someone about this too. He's like he also fell on his own sword because he could have fought it, and then he just like decided like no, I mean I understand like this was wrong and I shouldn't have done it, but now
he regrets,
and
resigning.
He should because we really could use him right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to be honest, Kirsten Gillibrand was on the Daily podcast recently talking about it, and does she regret it? And she doesn't regret it.
Right.
And she really used him and her other colleagues like used him as an example.
Right.
And I think that they were trying then to take the president down. Well, they're setting this example. He can if Al Franken can do this, then and he's going to be fired. So then we're going to turn to a bigger fish. But that didn't happen.
No, because the Democrats are trying to fight fire with water with fire or something. Right. It's like the team on like the Republican side, like they know we have evidence of
so many women
Trump doing
are
stuff,
coming forward,
and nobody
with
cares
him.
on
Nobody
that side.
No.
So like, what are we doing? Why are we losing some of our best fighters? But
that is not.
So like, there's like a weird balance, and also like what Al Franken did was that he, in a joking way, there was a picture of him touching this woman's boob, and like that is so typical of like comedy people. Like we just are like, we have no boundaries, and it's like this thing, and it becomes funny, and you like whatever. And like, I'm not saying that that's okay to do. It's like with the slapping of the butt or whatever. Like, it's not okay, and we need to like change that. We need to stop.
Right.
But like, it didn't warrant necessarily his like firing, I don't think. Whereas we have someone in office as a president right now who is like talked about grabbing women by a pussy, walking in on women changing in like the Miss America pageants. He's like possibly involved in the Jeffrey Epstein thing.
Right.
Like there's a lot of we have a lot of things with him.
Yeah.
You know?
And just imagine all
his
the
wife
women
accused him of rape, by the way.
Right.
Ivana Trump. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of
and just imagine all the women that are remaining silent. Like,
right. He assaulted that woman in the Barneys or something.
I have a friend of a friend who claims to have had something happen with our president.
Right.
And she will not come forward because she has a family and she lives in Florida and she doesn't want to deal with it. And so if that's one person,
there's so many.
That's how many people are out there.
Right. So I think that like also
believe her.
Right.
Watch this film. It's really great. But also
like understand, I don't know. It is difficult.
Right. Again, like the Louis C.K. thing really does upset me. And I do think, we did Skankfest 2 years ago. And had we been there and Louis C.K. came out to perform, I think I would leave. I'm just not. The comparison of, I was reading an article about how this woman said she listened to his set, like the one that you said, the 45-minute set, and she feels sorry for him. But then she goes into how she feels more sorry for club owners, but specifically the waitresses who are working at the clubs that have to then be in that circumstance.
Right.
And kind of the comparison of like, okay, if this was any other business, say this guy was working at Walmart.
Right.
And he starts like asking his coworkers if he can jerk off in front of them in the storage room or something in private, but ask their permission. He would be fired and he wouldn't be able to get, he wouldn't be able to work anywhere else.
Yeah.
But like,
it's hard because like and that's not censorship though.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're a Walmart employee, like you're not being censored.
No, yeah.
You're just like, and that's where things get tricky with like the entertainment industry.
But my point too is like, you know, for the women that are working these clubs, that it's the club owner kind of saying it's more important for this person to be on stage than your safety.
Totally. No, totally. And I think that like what those waitresses should have the right to do is like not work that shift.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and like they shouldn't get fired for not showing up to work that day, you know, and maybe they would. I mean, there's all that stuff. Cause I do agree with that too, that like, I'm not like rooting for Louis to be performing more. I'm like hoping that he doesn't so that he can just like, I think what annoys me about him going out and performing a lot now is he seems to have missed the point.
Yeah, you know? That's my point of him. Like, I don't think he's sorry, but
I don't think he's sorry. And I think he like, I think he really sees himself as a victim in all this. And like, I think for his mental sake and for his like heart sake, he needs to do some real soul searching because I think he's not done. Help. He's not done enough. And I think that like he's definitely not setting a good example for like, you know, and then it eggs people on like, yeah, like he shouldn't be sorry. And yeah, what he did wasn't so bad. And it's like, but maybe it's not your time right now to like be on stage. Like maybe it's time for us to be hearing these women's stories. And maybe it's our time to like take that seriously. And like, if he was really sorry, he probably wouldn't be up on stage. Well, he certainly wouldn't be on stage talking about this stuff and making jokes about it and like making Parkland jokes that are just so like, it's weird. It feels like he's becoming unhinged. You know what I mean? He didn't strike me as a healthy person on stage when I listened to that. And I think that like that's unfortunate too.
And
like,
mind you, he was one of my favorite comedians.
Oh my God. I mean, I think he's
brilliant.
It does not take away from his, I mean, I know in retrospect people say you go back and listen to some of these jokes and you're like, ooh, and I guess maybe that's true. But like he still was a expert craftsman. Like he definitely crafts beautiful jokes.
Don't get me started about Bill Cosby.
I mean, oh God. I went back after the Bill Cosby thing. I went and watched an episode of the Cosby Show and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I felt like I lost my dad in this weird way. I mean, it's so fucked up. It's like, you guys just don't do this shit. Don't do it.
Right. Keep your dick in your pants.
And honestly, like, I think that what this all ties back into for me, if I'm talking to somebody that's not understanding the Me Too thing, my bottom line is like, women are people. Right. And that's like my thesis for this whole podcast, which is like, why do we have to keep reminding you that we're just other human people? Like, would you want that to happen to you? Would you want to be in these positions? Then why are you putting people in these positions?
Right.
Would you want to be like coerced into sex? Would you want to be like in a position where your boss is making you really uncomfortable and then you're having to make a decision between like, do I keep my job and feed my kids but put up with this nonsense? Or do I say, fuck you, I'm out of here, you know? Right. And like those are really hard decisions that real people are having to make every day. And I think that like, it's unfortunate that men that want to fight like, oh, Me Too bullshit. It's like, just think about it. Like, have a little compassion. Like, look at it from another perspective for 1 second. For God's sake, women don't owe you anything. Women are not objects.
And like we saw in Edinburgh, this woman. Oh God, this was so powerful. This woman was naked on stage and said, "I'm still not asking for it. You can be naked in front of another person." And they do not have to sexually.
They don't have the right to do anything to you. Yeah.
No,
I was sobbing during that too because it was so powerful, and I think that we really take that for granted. It's like, again, that notion of like, well, what were you wearing?
Right.
You know, it's like I was wearing nothing, but I didn't want to have sex, and so now the answer is like, you know, then if I say no, I don't want to have sex with you, no matter what I'm doing, then like you get up and walk away and say, okay, no, thanks, no problem. Right. You know. We have to make sure people understand that better.
And that's why the Me Too movement is not going away anytime soon.
No, and I think that I'm hopeful too that it'll continue to like, you know, and we
shed light on.
And we'll find that weird balance where again, like where we don't lump everybody in as a Weinstein.
Right.
But we also start to be able to have conversations and private conversations. It doesn't always have to be an outing thing. I think that like there's also a difference between if you have a bad experience on a date or something, you don't have to post about it on Facebook.
Right.
You can like have a conversation with that person. If that person doesn't get it, then maybe you can post it on Facebook. I don't know. But like there is that.
No,
balance.
I think that's
like,
a really
some people
good
are
point.
also, I think that there's this weird culture too that's happening where everyone like is kind of getting off on like ruining people's lives.
Oh God.
And that's definitely happening.
Yeah.
We definitely see that happening. And that like that doesn't really help the cause that much. It just makes people angry and it puts people in weird positions. I think we could be having like conversations. I think we could be having like in schools it'd be nice to see like having like more assembly type things where it's like, hey, let's talk about like consent.
Right.
Let's talk about
I want to do
dating.
it with Louis C.K.
I think
let's have a conversation.
Well,
Louis, if you're listening,
yeah.
we'll have you on the pod. I may not watch your stand up, but I'd love to talk to you.
I definitely thought that was a move that I was really hoping that Aziz was going to make. That like
me too.
I love
him.
He was going to host like a show where we can have a open conversation, like one of those round table conversations.
Because I do think that he was just misunderstood and
totally.
I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know for sure.
No, and I think he's like creepy. Like I think he's like one of these
just
creepy,
unaware
unaware guys.
Nerds.
But we gotta like, we just gotta like, teach
too,
people how to like read signs.
I haven't seen his special. He has a special on Netflix now. Yeah, and apparently he does talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't follow him very carefully as a stand-up particularly. But.
My sister loves him.
Yeah.
Actually has that funny story about him getting his phone number.
She was a little bit Me Too'd by him too.
Well, okay, all right.
It happens.
Gosh. Well, I'm glad that we kind of, we finally talked about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to
always
been
been
a
like
little
that.
bit. I'm sure people have lots of opinions about it too. I'd be interested to hear anybody's opinion if you want to write us at Reformers.com. You can do that too. Difficult Women podcast at gmail.com and give us your opinions about this. Like,
especially if men listening, I would actually really love to have a conversation.
This is a dialogue. This isn't just like this can't just be women shouting things angrily and not like able to process why these things are happening. Right.
Well, I thought this was interesting. When we were in St. Louis, we did a show with another comedian, and he has a song about like getting drunk and touching girls' boobs, and it was funny, and everyone was laughing during it. And then we went up and did our set, and then afterwards we had a conversation in the green room. He was like, "Are my lyrics like to me too?" And I was like, what did you say exactly? And he told me the line of like getting drunk and grabbing boobs and touching, slapping your ass and stuff. I was like, yeah, I mean, listen to what you're saying.
Yeah, it might be.
That's like, sexual assault.
And also like good for him though for
exactly.
Asking.
That's the point of like, I don't think he ever, that never occurred to him. Yeah. But after seeing our 30-minute set.
Right. That it's like, wait a minute. That's not okay. Huh.
And,
and I get it. Like our society has like ingrained in men that like that women are objects and they're allowed to like movies like Porky's and all these like, you know what I mean? Right. That like even Baywatch or whatever, wherever women are just so objectified. So like if you've been raised like that your entire life.
Right.
And like nobody's ever told you different, then like I understand why that would be hard and pill to swallow and confusing. So let's work it out.
Yeah,
let's figure it out.
But how cool to have that conversation with this man after seeing our show, and like that's what we need more of.
Totally, and that's why we sing about.
That's why we exist. Yeah. Oh man, we are changing the world. I mean, one little convo,
comedian at a time.
Oh yeah.
Well, let us know what you think.
Yeah. We have a perfect song to play out for this one.
Yep. So listen up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Hollywood has been so irresponsible. Each week it seems a new abuser is named. And while I'm happy that people are being held accountable, I don't want it to affect the way I'm entertained. Of course I think the patriarchy should be dismantled, but not if it means all my favorite shows get canceled. So keep it in your pants, or all my favorite films won't stand a chance.
watching every Weinstein flick, 'cause he couldn't stop whipping out his dick. So keep it in your pants. You'll have a sick idea of romance. Stop publicly rubbing up on your crotch, or we'll have no TV left to watch. Think of all the residuals